G'day. I've got another beautiful place here in the Barossa Valley and I'm here to talk to you a bit about doubts and fears today. Doubts and fears are something that we all have. Sometimes they're niggly things and other times they scream at us like a fire alarm demanding our attention. And in times of change and challenge, in times of loss, in times of uncertainty, in times that we realize just how little control we have, we can be confronted by doubts and fears. I think it's really important that we are conscious about the way that we deal with doubts and fears. Because if we give them too much power, they can be debilitating. We can find them ending up being like self-fulfilling prophecies where the very things that we doubt and the very things that we fear come true because we end up living in doubt and living in fear. But if we just pretend they don't exist, that's not a good idea either, because they can fester. Or if we just work to avoid the things that we're afraid of and the things that cause us doubt, then what can happen is that we can shrink back deep into our comfort zone, and then we stop growing. And we end up living our lives like a sporting team that only plays defense. Less likely to lose, but less likely to win as well. And so we need to be really careful with the way that we deal with our doubts and fears. And I think that these things are really like questions. Questions that need to be asked. And in fact, I think if we we could end up being those sorts of people that are afraid to ask a question unless they know what the answer is or have some sort of grip on the answer. And when that's the case, then our doubts and fears end up being the truth that we settle on. Where doubts and fears really are meant to lead us in the search for truth, not to be our truth. We are meant to find ways to acknowledge our doubts, acknowledge our fears, but then search for the answers. Search for the courage to carry on. A couple of thousand years ago, there was a guy called John. And John had a friend named Jesus. And John recorded for us stuff that happened with his friend Jesus. And he recorded for us that John himself saw his friend Jesus being killed by a crucifixion. John was there at the bottom of the cross until such time as Jesus had breathed his last breath. And yet that same John recorded for us that 3 days later, when John was in a room with some mates, a locked room, his friend Jesus suddenly appeared. And John admits that they were all afraid. I think I would be too, because they had seen Jesus die, and suddenly he's there, not as a ghost, but as someone risen from the dead. I think I would have been afraid as well. What does Jesus do with their fear? Does he belittle them? Does he mock them for being afraid? Does he poke fun at them? Does he ignore their fear? He doesn't do any of those things. Jesus acknowledges their fear and offers them peace. A peace that is soul deep. A peace that will address their fear. John also tells us that on that occasion there was one of their friends who wasn't there. a guy called Thomas. And when the people who were there tried telling Thomas that Jesus had turned up, not surprisingly, Thomas was a bit skeptical. I think I would have been too. In fact, he admitted to his friends that he doubted what they had to say. He said, unless I see it myself, I'm not going to believe that one. And I think that's fair enough. What did Jesus do with Thomas's doubt? Did he say, well, if you doubt me, that's not good enough? Did he say you need to have faith and believe regardless? Did he say you shouldn't be questioning me? Did he say, fear and doubts, there's no place for those? No. Jesus met Thomas's question with his answers. Jesus met Thomas's doubts with proof. Friends, if you're doubting, if you're afraid, it's okay. Don't feel judged about that. Recognize it's part of being human. Reach out to those things that have been tested and found to be true. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. Don't be afraid to admit that you have them and that you have fears. For when we do, then we can hold on to what is true. When we do, then we can choose courage. May you find the courage. May you find the faith and the strength today to meet your doubts and your fears. Till next time, I'll catch you later.